Good evening, everyone. And we are now in Ecclesiastes chapter 11. Now, Ecclesiastes chapter 11 is a relatively shorter chapter. So we will spend a bit more time on some of the words to unpack. Now, in chapter 11, just like in chapter 10, there are a lot of idioms, how the Hebrew people express themselves. So I would try my best to actually help unpack some of these words and the ideas behind it. In chapter 11, verse 1, 1 and 2 would be together. The idea of cast is to send out, right? Send out. Bread is bread, right? Bread is bread upon the waters. Now, the waters here really mean the face of the waters. Something along the lines of Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. On the face of the waters means the surface of the water. So when you throw bread, it doesn't sink, it stays on top of the water. So that's what it means by send out your bread upon the face or the surface of the waters. And it carries on, for you will find it after many days. The idea of find in this case is, well, you could say that you can meet it again after many days, right? After a long time. I think the word many days means a large number of days, right? So the idea here is to do good. To do good. So casting bread or sending out bread really is to do good, to feed the poor, to feed the hungry, to do things that you do not expect a return. And little will you know that you will meet again. And after a long time. So that's basically how the idiom shapes up, right? So it's an encouragement to, as people who are living under the sun, remember, do good to others. And don't expect a return. Perhaps one day you will meet it again after a long time. Give a serving, verse 2, give a serving to 7 and also to 8. For you do not know what evil will be on the earth. So when you unpack this, you would see this give, this is an imperative. It is to grant, right? Grant a share. Usually when we talk about a share in this case, you'll be having a good thing. So you have a good portion of food, and that's the kind of a meaning. And so it actually does correspond with this bread, right? This serving. And in so doing, it speaks about giving it out to a lot of people, not just to 1 or 2, but to 7 or even 8 people, meaning a lot. For you do not know, and you will not expect. I think that would be the same idea. You won't expect what Ra'ah will come upon the land. And so the idea is somewhat consistent with this. So let me just highlight the colors. This and this are both shaping up about the same. So basically is when you go and help, just give your share to the people who needs it, because you don't know what bad things can come to the land. You may not have a chance to do good again. And when you do, don't expect it to be returned. Perhaps one day you may encounter them again and the good will come back. Now that's the idiom of expression here. Our next set would be verse 3 and 4. It says, if the clouds, well, clouds, you will know what is clouds, is full of rain, you'd see that these will be dark clouds. And remember, in the Hebrew, most of the time when we look at some of these expressions, they are very visual, very imagery driven. So if the clouds are full of rain and you look up, you would see that the clouds are dark. And they empty themselves upon the land, right? The earth would be the land. So you're a farmer, and when you say it empties itself, it actually causes itself. It causes itself to be empty. So the rain falls on the earth, and as wherever the land may be, right? So it doesn't pick a particular spot just to rain on a person or a particular tree. And so wherever it is, it will just empty itself. And so it says, if a tree falls to the south or to the north, in the place where the tree falls, there it shall lie. Now, these two expressions speaks about where there is good, it comes naturally, and it falls where it will. Just like a tree, when it falls down, right? It shall lie there. When the rain empties himself on the land, that's where it will fall. So basically, these are things that when it happens, and it doesn't pick and choose. And so now in verse 4 comes a very interesting consequence of verse 3. So it says, he who observes the wind will not sow, he who regards the clouds will not reap. What do you mean by that? First of all, the word observes is to keep. You keep, you give heed. Give heed to the wind. And what about the wind here? Is it talking about, in verse 4, the wind would be the wind that blows the clouds right here. And when a person who keeps watching the wind, he will not sow seeds. Sow seeds means to scatter seeds. Well, in the old days, in this case, this is not paddy, so you don't actually plant into the ground. You actually take seeds and you cast it into the air and let it fall where it may. That then it will grow from there. But then if this person keeps looking at the wind, he will never sow, because as the wind keeps blowing, there will never be a time to scatter seeds. And same thing in the second phrase here. It says, he who regards the clouds. The idea of regards is to see. If you look at your clouds, if you consider, what about the clouds? The clouds is going to be full of rain and it's going to rain. Then you will never reap. What is reap? Reap is to harvest. And to harvest in a more visual form, to cut short the things you plant, right? To cut short the plant. So if you have wheat, you cut it down where probably towards the top where you keep the grain. So the idea of reaping is about harvesting, is to cut short. So what is the idiom trying to say? It says if this person keeps looking at the wind, he will never scatter his seeds. If he keeps looking at the clouds, he will never cut his plants to harvest. Basically, it means that if a person is always very scared of the elements, nothing is going to happen and nobody will get to eat anything. And so this verse 4 really says, well, if the clouds rain, it'll rain. If the tree falls, it will fall. And if you're a good farmer, you would understand the principle here that when it is time to sow, just sow. When it's time to reap, just reap. And it's not necessary to just look at the clouds and observe the wind. That's the general tone of the idiom. Verse 5 now brings us to this. If you do not know what is the way of the wind, or how the bones grow in the womb of her who is with child, so you do not know the works of God who makes everything. So let's unpack this. You would be the audience that the Koheleth is talking to. And in our case, we would be one of the audience now. So as you do not know the way of the wind would be a ruach, right? And in this case, it's not the spirit, it's the way of the wind. How and where it will blow. All right. So this is about knowledge, about perception. And because the wind itself, you just look at this, the wind, you cannot see the wind. You can only see the effects of the wind. So you don't know the way it comes and goes. So the way would be the path, or in this case, the circuit. Now, one of the things that we need to be aware of is that winds have circuits, winds have path, that it just doesn't blow randomly. Now, so there are things that they call trade winds. So people who are sailing knows when the wind will blow in which direction. And so in the time of the agricultural life of Israel, they will also know the east wind and the west wind. However, sometimes the east wind, when you least expect it to come, it does come. And so that's what it means, that sometimes you just can't perceive how the wind really blows. I'm reminded that back in 2019, towards the late November, where it's supposed to have the west wind that brings in the rain. At the time when I was in Israel, it got very hot. And then I discovered that actually the wind that was supposed to blow didn't blow, which was the west wind. And the wind that actually blew was the east wind. And the east wind was very hot and dry. And so we were going around in shorts when it was supposed to be a cool and getting cold towards the winter. That is what I think verse 5 is trying to say, that we can't really see and perceive the circuit. Sometimes it comes, sometimes it doesn't. But by and large, we need to realize that there is a circuit, right? The way of the wind. The second part is this. The second part is about bones. Besides bones, we can also understand this word as the substance. The substance of the child in the womb. Now, the womb here is actually the batan. The batan would be specifically the, how should you say, the belly part. And so it's translated womb because it gives a connotation of a woman who is with child. So the belly portion sticks out. And when you talk about this, there is some mystery about pregnancy. And so when a child is in the belly or the womb of the mother, the seed changes and morphs itself and goes into a mode where it literally changes its form into a final substance of a real baby with a head, with the limbs and everything else. And so that's what the word bones speaks about, because it starts without bones and it ends with bones, very structured and very complete. And so this is another mystery in the verse. So you can't tell how it changes, what really takes place, but it happens. So we know it happens because we can experience what we call the effects of the wind. We can look at the birth of a child. But what happens in the way and what happens in the belly, in the womb of the mother, we can't really see, and things that is changing. So you remember, this is a time where there's no X-ray, and these two is really talking about things that you can't see, but it's happening. And so the conclusion here, you will not know the works of God. And so God comes back into the picture. There are many things that God has done, but how he does it. And so this word here, who makes everything, and the word mix is asa, means that the things that he do, right, that he accomplishes, Let's see. We can see the effects, but we cannot know really how God does it. We try. So even the Koheleth at the time of Solomon, he can see God at work, but he is saying he cannot explain everything about how God works. But we can actually tell that God is working. And that would be verse 5. That would be verse 5. So verse 6, in the boker, you sow your seed. And remember, sowing here means to scatter. So let me just put the word down. You scatter. Morning means daylight. When you can see, you scatter your seeds. And in the evening, Erev, that would be nighttime. Right? Nighttime. You do not withhold your hand. Now, the word withhold your hand would be to rest your hand or to remain quiet with your hand. What does that mean? It means that you need to be busy. And it is not time to shake leg, basically. So I guess people who are in agriculture, I'm not sure whether you have had relatives who who lives in the outskirts of the Klang Valley, where they tap rubber. They wake up early in the morning, and their job never seems to be done. They wake up early. There's lots of things to do. They collect. They come back and never cease to amaze me that people work so hard. And this would be the agricultural way of life, which we don't quite appreciate anymore because we don't see that agricultural life. And so this is about busyness that keeps happening. And so the Kohelet says, you do not know which will prosper, either this or that, or whether both will be good. Well, the word good is tovim, that comes from the word tov, things which is agreeable, right? Agreeable, or well, good in our sense. So what you do in the daytime and what you do in the nighttime, don't rest, because we do not know what will succeed. The word prosper is succeed. The idea here is kasher means to be straight or smooth, and the idea here would be, in the ancient days, when things are smooth to move forward, it is good, and that is what they mean by prosper. So today in the Chinese idea of prosperous New Year, people are thinking more of maybe educational, academic success, job success. But the idea here, this is about agricultural success, that whatever you plant and you will get to harvest, but you don't know for sure. So we don't know whether this will work or that will work. That's how it says, this or that, right? This or that. Then that's in the English. But in the Hebrew, it will be this or this. But it's a question. Do not know which will move forward. Or maybe both, the two of them, will be equally good. And so this is about, life is filled with mystery. It is not as predictable as we would want it to be. That would be how I would say verse 6. Verse 7 and 8 says, truly, the light is sweet. It is pleasant for the eyes to behold the sun. Well, light is or, and so that's the Hebrew word, or. And it says or is sweet. And the word sweet here is pleasant. And the moment you see this word pleasant, and then you see this word pleasant, you would see that this is an A and a B, because it's going to speak about the same thing with an emphasis. The word pleasant here is tov. For the eyes to see the sun, the shemesh. And so, again, I remind all of us, when you look at the Hebrew words, you find that they are very action-oriented. They are very verb-based, and it is about looking at things. It's very concrete. And so this is talking about things that you can see. The idea of light is the illumination, or things that is bright. So light is very pleasant. So it is good to be able to see brightness. And in the second part is the sun is the brightness, right? The sun provides the brightness, the light, so to speak. And so it is nice, it is good for the eyes to see light. And so in Genesis chapter 1, verse 3, it says, let there be light. When God says, let there be light, it really tells us that it's not that there wasn't light previously. Darkness is not an absence of light, by the way. Darkness is purely not able to see the light. And so it says, light is sweet or pleasant. So being able to look at brightness and to look at the sun is good, because we're talking about life under the sun. And when you can see the sun and you can talk about life under the sun, what does that mean? You are alive. You are alive. That's what verse 7 is trying to say. But if a man lives many years, so we're talking about a life now, that's the connection here. If he is alive, the word lives, that he is alive. That's what the word lives really means. He's alive. And man here is Adam. So if the human beings, the mankind, lives many years, and then he actually rejoices, he's glad. What else can you say? He is merry. So he's happy. In them all. Now the word them all means in all his many years, right? In them all would be all his years. And so this is talking about when he's alive and is happy in all of them. He says, yet let him remember the days of darkness, for they will be many. Now, what would that really mean? Now, darkness is choshek, right? Choshek. And I've mentioned before in the Near East, darkness doesn't just mean switching off the light or there is no sun. Darkness really means dark, thick clouds. And so when he says, remember the days of darkness when the clouds came, there will be many. And the word many here means the days, how should you say, the darkness will cause many days. Okay, that would be a better way of looking at it. It is the darkness that is going to cause, right? The darkness for day will cause, this will be the darkness, the days of darkness will cause many of these days to happen. And days of darkness means uncertainty, right? Things that you cannot understand. So look at all of these in that sense. So don't look at darkness in modern day or light in modern day, and definitely not Greek. That's the idea. It says, because if a man rejoices in all these many years, there will be days of darkness where thick clouds come. So you notice this is an imagery, an agricultural imagery. And there will be many days that is uncertain, many days that we cannot understand why it happened. And says all that is coming is vanity. Say all of them that comes is havel. Now this does not mean useless. It means brevity, short, right? nebulous, which means that these days are not going to be that long anyways. When it comes, it will go. It will come, it will go. All that is coming. That is the days of darkness, right? The days of darkness that will cause many of these days, it will be short. And that would be how these verses, this verse 8 expresses itself. You may have many years, rejoice, be happy in all of them. And since we're talking about us, really, God wants us to be happy all the days of our lives, isn't it? But be aware that there will be days of darkness, days of dark clouds, days of uncertainty, days where we cannot understand. And there may be many, but they will be short. So let us complete our chapter right here. In verse 9, it says, rejoice. Now understand, this is be glad. This is an imperative, right? Be glad. Go, be happy, right? Make merry. O young man, in your youth. Well, young man and youth, what's the difference? Well, let me just give you this word here, bakor. Bakor really means a man at choice age. That he's got really, how should you say? He really have a prime of life, at the prime of life. So always remember these words, young man, right? Youth, on the other hand, is yelet. And youth would be childhood, younger years. And this is not adult yet. That's the expression here. So it says, oh, young man. And so it now refers to not all of us, but those young men who are at their prime of life. They're not at their adulthood yet, but at their prime of life. It says, let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Again, youth would be, well, how would you say youth? I think we could still use this word. In the days of your prime. Right? In the days of your prime. So you find that these words, young man and youth, these two words go hand in hand. And so let your heart cheer, and this is tov, be good to you in the days of your prime. And then the Kohelet gives very important instructions. Walk in the ways of your heart. Now, if you read this in a modern sense, it looks as if that, well, if you're a young guy, do everything you want. Well, that's not what it's trying to say. So it says, walk in the way of your heart. And the way would be, how would you say, the moral character. Of your heart. And this would be innocent, won't it? Right? Walk in the ways of your heart, because they are not adult yet. So the prime years is not when you are full adult. That would be how this would be understood, right? And in the eyes, the sight of your eyes. The sight would be the vision. What you see, right? The appearance of your eyes. And the word is eyes. And the eyes here would be the experience as well. And thereby we have now an A and a B. Because both of these is talking about an experience and a character of life that is still quite innocent. So in the Hebrew context, when you're not an adult yet, you haven't actually achieved the time where you can choose, you know how to choose between good and evil. So that is the time where it's considered innocent. And so, but know that for all these, God will bring you into judgment. Because as they begin to live, the idea of innocence will move to an idea of good and evil. And good and evil, in this sense, will be judged, of course, by God. What kind of advice is this? Is to look at where God plays in the lives as the young person grows up into adulthood, is to always remember God, that God will be the one who is judging. And we have read before about fear God, and that would be important for young people to understand and know this God. And remember to keep walking in innocent ways, even when you grow up to be an adult, to choose good and to reject evil. Therefore, remove is to turn aside. Turn aside. And the word sorrow here would be anger, would be grief, right? From your heart. And then put away, and the idea of put away is to avoid, and that means you will pass over. Right? Don't engage, just pass on by. And pass on what? You cause yourself to pass on evil, ra'ah, from your flesh. All right? And so let's take a look at this. Remove anger from your heart and to pass over evil things that is not good from your flesh. Remember, these would be an A and a B too, right? Do not engage with evil, with things that is not right. And so it says for youth, childhood would be the same as this word here. Let me just use a different color. This word here, youth, is this word here, youth. And this word youth is a different word. Now, this word for youth has never appeared before. And this word youth is blackness. And by blackness, it will be of hair. So when you're old, you would have gray hair. When it talks about blackness, your hair is still black, you are young. Right? And it says they are vanity. Again, this is not useless. Childhood is not useless. Your youth is not useless. Your prime years is not useless. They are short. So make good of it, because your youth in your prime life develops into adulthood, where it will lead you in a particular course of life where your life habits will shape up. So now we can see that from verses 9 and 10, it speaks about a time before adulthood to shape up the life of the prime of life, choice life, at a time where your hair is still black, not to engage in evil, nor of anger. Remember that it is God who will judge. And know this when you are young. Right? So walk in the path of your heart, which is at this point in time considered innocent, and your experiences are equally innocent. And remember that. And hence, when we come to the end of chapter 11, and it breaks into chapter 12, because chapter 12 continues and it gives us the probably the best part of the book of Ecclesiastes as well. And I urge us all to go back and read chapter 12. And with this, we end chapter 11. Hopefully, it gives us a stepping stone that we can get into the final chapter tomorrow. And then we will do a roundup and summary as well. And with this, we end chapter 11.